Hello friends, this is Sanket. Our today's topic is a JSON parsing in iOS application. So now first, in our previous session we had already discussed about the web API and the types of web API. So now here in this session we have to develop one application using a JSON parsing on your application data. So now how to integrate it? So now here first we have to require some JSON data. So now how to get it? So now simply first here I am opening your browser. Now whenever you use the implement or integrate any JSON or XML data, you have to get some sample data URL. Okay, so now here I am using one JSON data using REST countries API. So now here just Google it, REST country API. So now here you can see the first link as the REST countries.eu. So now just open it. Now this website is provided a sample data according to requirement. So now here you can see the API endpoints. It means this site is provide a sample API data according to requirement. Like you have to also use the all data, specific name, full name, code. But here you can see first. So now here I am using this link for the JSON parsing. So now simply just copy and open this link in your browser. Okay, now hit enter. So now you can see this is the JSON data. So now here I am required to develop this application using this JSON data. So now here this is the sample JSON data. So now you can see your JSON data is now it's a non-human readable format. Okay, but here you have to arrange this data in a specific format or sequence. Okay, so now here we have some tools. For example, you have to also use JSON viewer. Okay, now just simply search a JSON viewer. You have to get so many different types of online links for the JSON arrange sequence. So now here I am using the best JSON viewer online. It's a JSON formatter. Okay, now here you can see this is your sample data, but here I am required to remove this data. So now this is my data. So now first select all data, just copy and the paste here. Okay, then after here I am arranging my JSON data in a specific format. So now simply the format JSON. So you can see your data will be formatted with a different types as a dictionary and array format. Now you have to also use a JSON online editor like the JSON viewer. You have to also use the different types like as a JSON, it's a JSON viewer online. Like you have to also use JSON editor.org. So now here you can also different types of data for the JSON formatter. Same, I have to use this data and the format same data here. So now here I am using the JSON editor online.org and now just copy. So now you can see your data will be arranged in a specific format, because here whenever you use the JSON data is actually non-human readable, but you have to implement in your data in your IO application. At that time you have to require first the arrange in a specific manner. So now you can see your actual data in between there are the 250s array are there. Okay, now so now array is always started with 0. So now actual my array index started 0 to 249. Okay, so now here you can see this is my the last array. Now in a specific array you can see the each and every array consists of 24 rows. It means in your array you have to arrange different types of dictionary. So now this is the key pair value, it means dictionary data. So now this is the, for example, name. So now it's my key, the Afghanistan, so now it's your key value. Okay, now here you can use also alpha 2 code, it's a key, alpha 3 code, it's a key, the capital, region. So now these are the key. Now keys consist of different types of value. So now for example, here I am implementing this data in my iOS application. So now how to implement and how to integrate this data in our application? So simply let's start with the new projects. So here I am creating a new Xcode projects, and now I am using the single view application. The click on next. So write down your product name, it means your application name. So now here my application name is JSON Parsing. Now here just click on next and create. So now here I am creating one application for the JSON parsing. So now here I am using some JSON data and a print on our iOS table view. So now how to implement and how to integrate? So before we implement, first let's try to design our main.storyboard. So now here just go to your main.storyboard. So now here I am designing my screen using table view. So now here I am required to print on this data on our storyboard table view. So now here I am designing one table view. Now whenever you use the table view, just remember first integrate the data source and delegate with your view controller. It's a must required. Okay, so now here I am implementing the data source and delegate of our table view. Now let's try to implement with a view controller. So now here first I am using to create one array. So now here I am creating one array. So now my array name is data array. So now here my array type is it's a any. So now here I am creating as a array any, because here you can see your whole JSON data is in array. So now here it's required to store this data in our data array. Now in between you can access a specific data, like I want name, I want capital. So now this data in a dictionary format. So now here to also use and also integrate the data with dictionary. So now here I am also creating one dictionary. So now here I am creating one dictionary in a string and any format, because value is a different types. So now here first I am creating a two global objects, one for the array and second one for the dictionary. Now then after let's try to integrate your JSON data. So now here I am creating one function. For example, my function name is JSON data, and this function will be called with your view did load. So now here I am calling this function in our view did load method. Now let's try to implement our JSON data. Okay, so now first your data is what's data, it's linked for required to implement means integrate your JSON. So now first you have to require your JSON data URL. Okay, so now this is my base URL. So now here whenever you implement, whenever you integrate this data, you have to require this URL. So now simply first I am copy this link. Now here I am creating one object as a URL type. Now here the URL is always method is a string. So now here my URL is okay. So now here this is the URL for returning a JSON data, and same data will be integrated with our iOS application. Now how to implement it? So now here again it's required to integrate with a data object. So now here we have one class data. So now this class structure is converting your data in a data manner. So now here I am using the data method using a contents of URL. So now here you can see, but this method is containing a throw statement. Okay, so now throw, so now in throw in Swift, okay, how to use, how to implement a throw block. So now you have to require do and catch block. So now here first I have to require one do and catch block. So in catch is always returning your exception. So now here I am returning my local exception. So now here I am implementing your data in between a do block. Okay, so now do is always marked with try because this method returning a throw statement. So now here I am using the data, it contains of here URL. So now here you have to pass your URL objects. So now here I am using as a URL. Okay, now then after we have to convert your data in a JSON format. Okay, whenever you integrate your JSON implementation, JSON parsing, so now in Swift, okay, it's provide a one class. So now here I'm implementing and converting the whole data, and then after I'm store that data in our data array format because our data is returning a array format. Okay, so now here I am using and storing this data in data array. So now here I am using a data array, then so now here first I am converting my this URL data in the JSON format. So now in Swift we have one class, it's a JSON serialization. Okay, now this class is containing one method dot JSON object with data. Now here again you can see this method is returning a throw statement. So now you have to also use the try catch. So now here first I am implementing this class with the try. Now the JSON object with here you have to pass your data object. So now it means my data object is a DT. So now here I am using it's a DT, then option is a blank array, but here you have to require to implement your JSON array in a specific format. So now here I am stored your URL data and convert your data in a data array using JSON serialization class. So now here you have to also set a return type as a array. So now your whole URL data has been stored in this array. Okay, so now you have to also print on your console as per your reference. So now here my data has been stored in our array. Now let's try to print same data on our table view. So now how to implement? So now first we have to require a table method. So now first implement the table view protocol. So now here I'm using UI table view data source, then UI table view delegate. Okay, so now for the table view implementation we have to require a two method. So now here you can see and the fix it. Now let's try to implement a method. So now our first method is number of row in section. It means how many rows you want on your table view. So now this row is returning your JSON data. So now here my JSON data is returning total 250s array. So now here my whole data is stored in our data array. So now according to this array here I am returning data array dot count. Okay, so now according to a data array our table has been created total 250 rows. Now let's try to print this data using this method. So now I am using the cell for row at index path method. So now let's try to design for cell. So now here I am using UI table view cell, and then I am using a style as a subtitle because I want a two different element in single cell. So now here I want in my cell as a country name and the region. So now how to integrate? So now here I am using it's a cell style as a subtitle, and the reuse identifier it's always nil. Okay, but here I am using a cell text label. So now here on this label I want country name. So now your actually whole data is stored in data array, but here you have to access, you have to retrieve a specific elements. So now here we have to require to convert your data in dictionary format, because here you can see your whole data is stored in array format, but in array it's converting a 250s array. It means containing a 250 arrays. Now each and every array is containing a total 24 pairs. Okay, so now here I want a specific pair like name and capital. So now at that time you have to require to access your dictionary. So now here it's easy. Here I am converting my array into dictionary. So now here I will also create one dictionary. So now here I am using as a dictionary equals to, I am storing whole data array according to index. So now here I am using index path dot row, and how here I am converting my array into dictionary format. So now here I am using one object as a dict. So now here then after you have to access a specific pair using dictionary. So now here I want a country name on our text label. So now here I am using a dictionary. So now which key we require? So now here my key name is name. So now simply copy, and this is my key. Okay, so now here I am converting a array into dictionary. Now here I want another key on detail text label. So now here I am using detail text label dot text is equals to, now here I am using dictionary. So now here I want a capital. So now here just copy this key and paste it. Now here I am using as a string. Now then after I am design my cell with some accessory like that. So now here I am using, now it's optional. So now here, and then you have to require to return your cell objects. Okay, so now here first I am implementing my JSON using JSON serialization. So now here I want to store the JSON data in our data array. So now here I am creating one array, then after same data will be print on our table cell. So now let's try to see the output. So now here run your application. So now this is the JSON parsing in iOS application development. So now it's very easy to implement, to integrate your JSON parsing. Now you have to also print the JSON data according to your requirement. So now here I am using a table view. Now let's try to see the output. Now just hold it, your application is on the way. So now here I am implementing a JSON using JSON serialization class. So now here I am using one sample data, it's a REST country data. So now you have to implement as per your requirement. So now here your application is on the way. Okay, because your data is converting in the JSON format and your data is retrieving a server. So now first it's a time taking process. So now don't worry, just hold it. Now here, okay, yeah, you can see. Okay, here I am implementing my JSON data on table view. So now here I am printing a country name and as well as the region name. So now here I am implementing your JSON data, okay, using a JSON serialization class. So now here I am using the JSON data for the sample data, it's a REST country. You have to also implement as per your requirement. Okay, so now here I am using, so now in your console you will also print my JSON data. So now here same data will be print on your console as well as on your table view. So now here this is the JSON data. So now these data are from the cloud, it means a JSON API. So now here I am using a REST country API and then retrieve the same data on the table view using JSON serialization. Okay, so now this is the JSON parsing in iOS application development. Thank you.